Okay, here's a video of the shop. Mechanical tools over here for doing all the mechanical work. Random storage of shit. Joiner, surface planer, table saw, radial arm saw back in the corner, band saw, lumber rack storage, dust collector, furnace, chest freezer, rolling garbage can doubling as a workbench, and the other workbench with other stuff. So as you can see, there's a lot of crap packed in a small place. Oh, forgot the drill press in the corner. I got a lot of crap packed in a small space, so you don't need some gigantic shop to be able to build a boat. Okay, here's the collection of drawings I'm working off of. I drew them to scale and then adjusted from there, so I could measure out the angles and cut lengths and everything. As you can see, there's nothing real horribly fancy with the way I drew it up. Some of the stuff is not to scale, as you're going to be able to see by some of the drawings. I had many other renditions where there were just ideas on what I was going to do. This is the base plans I'm working on to make the hull of the boat. The superstructure sticking up above, that I'm just going to pretty much wing it as I go along. I built permanent blinds on boats before, so this is going to be nothing new to me. But I found it's a lot easier to sort of make it up as you go along and cut stuff to fit instead of trying to cut stuff to a certain size and then making it fit afterwards. We're going to start out with the radial arm saw to cut the vertical frame sections for the sides of the boat. Some of the dust off of here. Always nice to have one of these laying around the shop. Makes it real easy to clean things up. That or an old paintbrush works real good too, which I use in some of the other areas. So what we're going to work on are these sections right here. I'm going to start out by cutting them square, which is the 17.5-inch length, and then I'll cut the angles on the table saw with miter gauge setup. I can set the miter angle on the radial arm saw, but it's very touchy to get back to perfectly to zero, so I prefer not to move it unless I absolutely positively have to. The bottom section here, we'll work on those later. I'll cut those notches out with the stacked dado on the table saw, and I'll do a little more filming when we get to that. So right now we're going to start working on these guys right here. Okay, what we started with is we cut the 2x4 down into a couple of more manageable working size chunks. I do have the room to put a full 8-foot 2x4 in here, but it gets a little bit putsy with that much overhang, so I prefer to cut it down. Right now the saw is spinning down, and as soon as it stops, we will get set up with a mark for 17.5 inches. So the way I do this is I pull the saw out, put the board up against it so that I know where the cut's going to be. This is sort of fun to do with only one hand. Let's put this guy in here. There we go. So then I'll come out to, find my pencil. There it is. So we'll come out to 17.5 inches. And just put a mark right on the table. So that way, when I go to cut each time, I know that if I stop the board right there, the piece I'm cutting off this way will be 17.5 inches. And it'll be repeatable because we'll be stopping at the same point. The other way I could have done it would be to measure 17.5 inches from this side of the saw blade out to this side and clamp a stop block on the back support there for the saw, and then I just slide up against it and cut, and it'll be 17.5 each time. Since I'm only not cutting 100 of these, I'm only going to cut 16 of them. It'll be plenty fast just to stop at that mark and cut them off. So time to start cutting. Okay, I clamped the board on because I'm going to cut this with the radial arm saw with one hand operating the saw and one hand holding the camera, because I know a lot of people are scared to death of radial arm saws because they think that they kick and they bite and they yank and everything like that. The key is to use the right type of saw blade. You need a neutral or I believe it's a negative rake tooth on it instead of a positive rake tooth. If you get a positive rake tooth, it really digs in and pulls. If you get a neutral or negative rake, then it's doing more cutting and less pulling. So let's fire it up and you can see how easy this actually cuts. As you can see there, I was not putting any backward force on the blade. I was just very slowly and easily pulling it through with my fingertips, and it cut perfectly fine. So, key to radial arm saws, use the right blade. Now sometimes you get boards with some knots in it that you don't really want, and if you're lucky like I was with this one, I can get my 17.5-inch measurement, so you can see it, in between each one of the knot areas. So even though I believe I'm only getting 1, 2, 3, 4 out of this one, I got 5 out of the other one, I'll have 4 knot-free chunks of wood out of a piece of wood that otherwise probably would have been the best choice for building the boat. Okay, there are the stack of 16 side frame members. Now remember I said I was going to cut it on the table saw, but while I was working on the radial arm saw, I looked down and remembered, hey, we got a compound miter saw sitting right here. So what I'm going to do is set this guy up, set the angle with my new fancy schmancy digital angle gauge that I picked up from Rockler. I think it was Rockler. It was either Rockler or Woodcraft. On sale for $12.99. May not be the best tool in the world, but as long as it gets me fairly close, it'll be better than the little notched in scale on the miter saw. So we'll be on to cutting the miters now. Okay, here's how we set up the miter gauge. I set it for 65 degrees, got the slot lined up, assuming that the slot is perfectly square with the blade. Took a piece of scrap wood, cut it, and laid this guy back across it to verify. And lo and behold, it looks like this thing is actually fairly accurate. So, time to start cutting. I'll get back after we get done cutting the stack over here to the angles. Okay, there we got all the corners cut off. Bunch of sawdust. Stack of side frame members. And I only managed to cut one of them the wrong way, so I had to recut one. Get this all cleaned up, get the stack dado set up, and then we'll start looking at cutting some notches for the shear clamp and the heck is the other part called? Shear clamp and chine log, that's what it is. So that'll be coming up next.